Okay, it's time for Chapter 2, Sexual Anatomy, and we're going to start with male sexual anatomy. I found this picture on the internet. I'll bet a lot of you have seen it. It just cracks me up. This is not an actual penis. Let's go to a picture, a drawing of an actual penis. Okay, so this is a little diagram that'll show us most of the external structures that are comprising the penis. So the penile shaft is the area between the body and the head of the penis, and we'll look inside of that later. On an uncircumcised penis, there's a foreskin that actually can slide forward and cover the glands of the penis. In a circumcised penis, this would be missing. The corona is the edge of the glands of the penis, and corona means crown, and so you can kind of see how ancient doctors must have regarded the penis, right, that it wears a crown. This little stretch of skin between where the corona comes together and then the foreskin is called the frenulum. And you have many frenula in your body. You have one under your tongue, you have one between your lips and your bottom teeth, and one between your lips and your upper teeth. You've got a lot of frenula in your body. This is just the one that's on the penis. The head of the penis is called the glans, and then we've got the urethra that comes out the center. The section of the penis that has the most densely packed nerve endings would be in the area where the frenulum joins the corona, and then around the corona. Next most intensely packed would be the penile glands, and then the least densely packed with nerve endings would be the penile shaft. So most of the sensitivity occurs on the corona, the frenulum, and the penile glands. I thought I'd take a little digression here and talk a little bit about a major penis issue that's really become more of a controversial issue over the past probably 30 years in the US, and that's the issue of whether to have baby boys circumcised or not. Circumcision is the process of removing the foreskin from the penis, and usually in the US, when it's performed, is performed on the first day of life. There are certain religious practices that delay it till the 8th day, and sometimes even later for religious purposes. But when circumcisions are performed in a hospital, it's usually within the first 24 hours of life. Now, it's become a controversial issue because there are some pros and there are some cons to circumcision. And so let's start with the benefits. And this all comes from a review of the literature that was conducted in 2010. First off, several studies have shown that men who have their foreskins removed have fewer urinary tract infections. The foreskin gives an opportunity for bacteria to breed because it's a nice warm, semi-moist, not very much oxygen. It's perfect for bacteria. And so men who have a foreskin are more likely to have bacteria that accumulates under their corona that then can move into the urethra and cause a urinary tract infection. Of course, people who are against circumcision point out very correctly that with proper hygiene and daily cleansing and pulling back the foreskin to clean around the corona, this shouldn't be an issue, but it is statistically a higher probability. Men who don't have a foreskin contract fewer sexually transmitted infections. Again, that the corona can sweep bacteria out of the sexual partner and capture it under the corona, and then the foreskin covers up the corona and gives that perfect opportunity for bacteria to breed. Also, viral infections like herpes can be, sort of incubated inside the foreskin behind the corona. So some people say, well, you're going to have fewer STIs without a foreskin. Also, your partners are going to have fewer STIs because on average, men who are circumcised, their partners are less likely to contract an STI from them. Again, because the foreskin can trap bacteria and virus that then could be transmitted to the partner. And so there are benefits to the man himself, and then to his partners. Of course, there are some concerns about circumcision. Some people just outright say it's mutilation. You were born with a foreskin, you're supposed to have a foreskin, why are we cutting off a piece of the body? In other discussions, they talk about removing things from female bodies and and everybody agrees that's mutilation, so why is it not mutilation for men? There are risks anytime you have any kind of surgery. So there's a very small but real risk. In fact, later in class you'll get to you'll get to watch a video about Dr. Money and the boy with no penis, and it was the result of a botched circumcision. So I mean, it's a real risk. It's a very rare risk. There's bleeding issues. There are, if the doctor cuts off more foreskin than they should have, then at erection it'll tear the penis. I mean, there are risks. Hardly ever happen, but they are risks. And then some people have argued that it reduces sensitivity of the penis. Now, any man in the group who's listening to this who is circumcised is probably thinking it could be more sensitive. That seems weird. But this study by Sorrells in 2007, I think I have it grow here for us, shows us the result. This is kind of a weird study, so just bear with me. Okay, so what they did was they got men who were circumcised and they got men who were not circumcised. And let me see if I've got yeah, I don't have it. Okay, so they got men who are circumcised and men who aren't circumcised. And they used a little probe that was, blunt on the end, so like some kind of surgical device, but it's blunt. It doesn't poke you. And they touched the penis in different places along the anatomy, starting with near the urethra, moving down around the corona, where the foreskin would attach if you were circumcised, or where it's actually attaching if you're not circumcised, and then down the shaft. And so what you're seeing is in the white bars are the men who are circumcised, and in the gray bars the men who are not circumcised. Their foreskins are intact. Now you'll see some places where do I have those reversed? Hold on a second. Yeah, I have those reversed. Sorry. White is non-circumcised and gray is circumcised. And you'll see there are some places where there are only white bars, where only the circumcised people were tested, and that's because they were touching in places on the foreskin or where the foreskin joins the shaft of the penis that aren't present on people who are circumcised, so they couldn't test that. Now, a shorter bar means that area is very sensitive. It takes very little pressure for the man to detect that they're being touched. The taller bars are areas where it took a lot of pressure for the man to detect it. So if you look at the places where you've got two bars present, both the circumcised and uncircumcised men were tested, you'll see that at every place, except for position 17, every other place on the penis where both people have those structures, the circumcised men were less sensitive than the uncircumcised men. Actually, if you look at position 9 and you look at position 17, the circumcised men were more sensitive. But if you look at those bars, see how there are those little lines sticking out the tops of each of the bars? Those are what are called error bars. Error bars tell us, remember back in chapter 1 when I was telling you about normal distributions and how 95% of the people fall within this range? Those bars that you're seeing right here are showing us one standard deviation away from the mean. So that means 68% of people fell within that bar. And then the top of the actual bar is the mean. So the average amount of pressure it took for the man to detect. And then those bars represent, yeah, there was some variability though. And so this encompasses 68% of respondents. What you'll notice is that for most of these bars, the error bars are pretty much equal. They're very similar to each other. They're not statistically different from each other in most of these positions. So remember, a smaller bar means it took less pressure for the man to detect that he was being touched. So you're seeing that by and large, the people who are circumcised need a little extra pressure, but not statistically different from the uncircumcised people. But people who are against circumcision point out the bars in position 3, and you could argue 4, 5, 13, 14, those are way the smallest bars. That means those are areas of the penis where it took the least stimulation for the person to notice that they're being touched, the least pressure to notice they're being touched. And so people look at those bars and they say, see, in the men who are circumcised, they're missing these areas that are the most sensitive. So if I describe to you number 3, the most sensitive spot, it's actually where, if you look back at our picture of the penis, hold on, okay, and see how they're pulling the foreskin backwards. In a normal resting penis, it would be folding forward and covering the glands. What they did was they took the probe, they inserted it under the foreskin while it was still forward, covering the glands, and they put it under the foreskin and touched the area where the foreskin joins the corona, which is absent in a person who's circumcised. The only analogy I can give to anybody who's circumcised or who's female, who doesn't, we don't have necessarily these structures anywhere in our bodies, is it's kind of like sticking your finger in your belly button in that area where you normally don't stick your finger, and it's got kind of skin that's covering it, so it doesn't normally get stimulated, so you can kind of put your finger in there and wiggle it around and you can feel it. It feels like almost like you're touching yourself on the inside of your stomach or something. It's kind of like that. It's a very sensitive area. It doesn't take a lot of stimulation for the man to detect that he's being touched, but that doesn't mean necessarily that it's pleasurable stimulation or that it's stimulation that a circumcised man is missing. So, or that it has anything to do with sexual arousal. So the fact that that bar is really small at number 3 has been used as an argument for, look, your circumcised men are being robbed of this most sensitive spot. But other people have said that's not really sensitivity in the way that you would normally think about it. It's just because it doesn't normally get touched. It doesn't necessarily make it more pleasurably stimulated. It's really hard to make a direct comparison, though, because men who had a foreskin into adulthood and then have gotten circumcised afterwards in adulthood are often used as the subject sample for making comparisons for what it used to feel like versus now what it feels like, which can be a little bit misleading because anybody who has a scar on their body from any kind of incision knows that the scar is less sensitive. It feels different. And so it may be a function of having had a scar in adulthood that people who are circumcised as babies don't really have, because the baby's repair system is different than what an adult's repair system is like. So it's really hard to make a direct comparison between what it used to feel like and what it feels like now. So what we're left with is basically, whoops, wrong button, sorry, equal levels of concern. We've got benefits that are kind of balancing the concerns. And so what we're left with is really nothing scientific that allows parents to figure out what they should do for their baby boys. You can't really lean on anything to say this is what I should do or I shouldn't do. Instead, what we're left with is, again, like I talked about in chapter 1, you have to set up sort of your own value system and figure out what you think is really important. If you want to comply with religious prescriptions, then that's important, and you do that. If you want to stick with sort of family norms and what's been going on with your family historically, then that's important, and that's what you do. It's hard to have a rational scientific discussion about this topic because there really isn't like that smoking gun, clear cut, this is the evidence that you should all rely on. So all I've given you is stuff to think about, unfortunately. Okay. The other penis issue I wanted to talk about is the issue of penis size. Like I said back in chapter 1, this can be a sensitive issue, and a lot of researchers in this area are male, and so they oftentimes say it doesn't matter, or it's hard to measure, or we don't want to talk about it, and so we're left with a lot of myths or people making assumptions. One of the things that people assume is that there is some kind of association between something and the penis size. Usually in class I try and get people to shout out what they historically have thought goes along with penis size, and I usually get people who offer hand size or foot size or nose size might predict penis size, race might predict penis size, things like that. It turns out that those are myths, that there really isn't an association between any other body part and the size of the penis. A taller man doesn't necessarily have a larger penis. Pretty much penises are penis-sized, and then bodies vary. And so you can't really judge from any other part of their body. What about race? this is a graph I got off the internet, always a great source of scientific evidence. And these are supposed to be measurements. These are in centimeters, so please don't have a heart attack when you see these lengths, because there's 2.5 centimeters per inch. So just to get you on the right graph here. So when you see the red ones are 9.66 to 11.66, that's in centimeters, not in inches. And so this is supposed to be showing, you know, like regional differences in penis sizes. And so the red would be the shortest penises going through the peach into the yellow, light green, and then the largest penises would be in the dark green. The problem with these maps and things is that there are a lot of variations in populations. There are a lot of variations based on hormonal exposures in the womb. There are all sorts of factors that can determine penis size that have nothing to do with race. So this is just a joke. We shouldn't be looking at that. But here we have a study from Lynn in 2012 where he actually measured penises between he measured a bunch of penises. I don't know why this guy did this, but he ran around and measured a bunch of different people. And here's a good time to appreciate what I mean by scientific language, because these are words that you normally would not see in polite conversation, but these are the scientific terms for different population groups. So we've got the Negroid, which would be people usually of African descent. We've got European Caucasoids, which would be people who generally are dwelling somewhere in Europe, but they came from originally the Caucasus mountains that are near like Georgia in the former Soviet Union. South Asian, North African Caucasoids, which would put us over into, Morocco and Libya and places like that. So you can see all these different names. Mongoloids, that doesn't sound right? But that would be talking about people of Asian descent that are sort of more in the Siberia, Mongolia region. So you see these different groups. Let's scroll down to where it says Mongoloids versus Amerindians mestizos. Mestizo is sort of a unpopular term anymore to refer to people who are of mixed ancestry between natives of North or South America and then European immigrants. So we've got some inappropriate words on this chart, but this is what scientists do. They use the science words. Okay, so I've done enough apologizing for these crazy words on this chart. So now you know who they're comparing now. And what you're seeing is see the column that says T. When you have a T that is less than 1, it is never going to be a significant difference. What a T statistic does is compares the average for one group to the average for another group. And so if the groups are significantly different from each other, the T value is going to be at least 2.5, 2.78, something like that. So you can see from these numbers that nothing is going to be significant. Everything is a T value that's less than 3. And then they did a corrected kind of group comparison in that Chaffee, and same thing. I mean, they're all non-significant. They all came out super small. So basically what the research has shown is that you cannot predict penis size from a person's racial ancestral makeup. So that's a clear myth. Now, just to make it fun, I also found this on the internet. Hey, if they can do a map of the world, they can certainly do a map of the US, right? And so this is going to be in inches. I don't think they have the inch length here, but what they're looking at is the smallest penis sizes are going to be in the, let's see, I want to make sure I'm saying this right, because I think we're talking about number 1 would be the state with the biggest average penis size, and number 50 would be the state with the smallest average penis size. So yay, we're in the big penis area, I guess. There may be an explanation for if this has any validity at all. I may have an explanation for why in a second, and that has to do with sexual orientation. Now, I mentioned earlier that hormonal exposure in the womb can have an impact on penis size. One theory of the origins of homosexuality is hormonal exposures in the womb. So these things are going to start to come together when we get to the chapter on sexual orientation. But one thing that can predict penis size is sexual orientation. So we've got homosexuals on the left and heterosexuals on the right. The mean is on the left column under each group, and then the standard deviation is in the right column. So that's telling us how variable the group was, how widely dispersed. And then we've got the T column, which is going to be comparing the two groups, and then the P is showing us how significant the T was. Okay, so we've got estimated erect size. Estimated means we've measured the flaccid penis and we didn't make the person actually get an erection for a measurement. So we've got estimated erect size, we've got measured flaccid penis size, so a non-erect penis, measured erect penis size, so they actually measured the erect penis, measured circumference of the flaccid penis, measured circumference of the erect penis. And what you see in every case is that the homosexuals had significantly larger penises on every measure than heterosexuals did. So this is going to be relevant when we talk about hormonal influences on homosexuality, but just trust me right now when I say that the explanation for differences in penis size are attributable in this study to fluctuating testosterone levels while the fetus was developing. So not race, but maybe sexual orientation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop here, take a break, and we'll come back and talk about the internal parts of the external structures.